Well, hello, pharmacy owners. I have a financial episode for you today. I recently put up a poll on our LinkedIn and Facebook pages asking pharmacy owners if you are interested in learning about financing working capital, if your cash flow is tight. And really, the overwhelming response majority is you're at least interested in learning more. So this is me helping you learn more. As any of you have been following me, I love to actually talking about cash flow and finances and numbers, all those nitty gritty things that most people hate. But instead of just talking about this myself, I'm bringing in Carlos, who is going to help us kind of dive into working capital and what are some solutions from a financial standpoint that you can use in order to help increase your working capital and keep your pharmacy running and being able to take care of those advantages and opportunities. So, Carlos, thank you for joining me today. Before we get started let's tell people who you are and where you're from and why you're talking about finances.
Sure. Thank you for having me, Lisa. So again, my name is Carlos Whale. I'm the CEO of Capital Solutions Bancorp. We've been around for more than 20 years, and what we do is we provide working capital for small and medium-sized companies, and that's all we do. We don't do equipment financing or anything like that. The working capital is our specialty.
So when we say working capital, nerds like you and me, we frankly probably know what working capital is, but there's probably some pharmacy owners, some pharmacy managers, some staff pharmacists that aren't exactly sure what we're talking about. So let's define working capital in a really simple way so that everybody's on the same page and we all know what we're talking about.
Yes. I'm glad you asked, because working capital has some very sophisticated accounting definitions that people, their eyes go blind and they go like, what the hell are you talking about? A very, very simple definition of working capital is simply, it's the amount of money that a company needs for payables before the company can collect its receivables. It's as simple as that. So that gap between having to honor your payables and the time that you can collect your receivables, that's the working capital that the company needs. It's as simple as that. So you can say that it's almost like a timing gap between payables and receivables. And the best way to visualize this is that if payables would be simultaneous with receivables, there would be no need for working capital. However, the reality is that that doesn't happen very often. And the truth is that you cannot make payroll or pay vendors and taxes with receivables. They only take cash. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. When I talk to pharmacies, I often tell them that working capital, your cash flow is the money you need to pay your wholesaler before you get paid from the insurances.
Exactly.
And they're like, oh,
right.
Okay, I know what that money is. So it's that extra cushion that you need in your bank account. And there's actually many reasons why a pharmacy might be low on working capital. Some are critical red alert reasons. Others actually could be good reasons. There's actually many times in my pharmacy career of owning my first pharmacy where I almost grew myself out of business. When you're growing very rapidly, cash flow can get very tight. And that sounds, counterintuitive. That's like, hey, you've got more business. Don't you have more cash? But again, it's a timing issue and it takes a while to come in. And then there's other red flags of like, you're absolutely not making any money. So even if you're collecting all your money, your profits are so low that, you're not having anything left over, and those are some more red alert reasons. But from you as, you work with a lot of pharmacies on specifically their working capital. What are the top reasons that usually a pharmacy is coming to talk to you about options for more working capital?
Yeah, well, the reasons where cash flow, working capital becomes tight are really revolve around the following. Number one is when payables get shorter. And we know this very, very clearly when wholesalers start demanding payment, faster payment. That increases the gap between payables and receivables. The second reason is when receivables get longer, meaning your collections just simply take longer to come in. Another reason is when margins become tighter. That requires all these reasons require more working capital to maintain the same level of activity. Now, there is another interesting situation that you touched upon that is very interesting. This requires more additional capital, working capital, and that is when a company is growing. And I think the best way to picture this is the following. Imagine a body of a 5-year-old kid that works perfectly well with a certain amount of blood, and all the organs work efficiently and so on and so forth. Now, fast forward the movie 30 years, and there is no way that that adult body can work efficiently with the same amount of blood as the kid had. And obviously, the organs do not have enough blood supply. So it's, one organ robs the other one for, and that's a little bit what happens in a growing company, which is what you were mentioning. So it is very, very common that pharmacies and companies in general can grow themselves into bankruptcy, not because they're not making a profit, but because they just did not foresee the need for additional working capital. And this is very interesting because aside from being a very, very stressful life, lack of working capital has a secondary and very damaging consequence, and that is management tries to avoid pain. And every time that management feels that cash flow pain, it kind of instinctively lifts its foot from the gas pedal and stops slowing down growth and coming up with strategies to serve their customers better and so on. And they just basically give up on the idea of growth, which I think is very bad because it shortchanges the partners and employees of the pharmacy. And the customers, of course, because the company just simply does not achieve its full potential. And it just makes for a pretty miserable life. So yeah, that is the issue with lack of working capital. And I know that in your audience has heard you before, and I could not agree with you more that it's so important to have very, very good KPI to be able to track how you're doing with your cash flow. It's very, very important to know not only if you're making a profit, but just as important, if not more important, to know whether your operations are producing cash or consuming it. It's very, very important.
Yeah, I like to talk about in profit versus cash flow. There's profit does not equal cash and cash does not come from profit. It's illogical for somebody thinking on the outside, but when you understand the finances and how money flows through a business, it starts to make more sense. So I love helping pharmacies owners understand that and distinguish between you can be profitable, but you could also have no cash and you can't operate. I love your analogy of the blood because I often say cash is the oxygen to a business, but I love that analogy. That's very clear, especially to us clinicians. And so, you mentioned about getting working capital. So obviously you guys are helping pharmacies get working capital. And a lot of times when they are short, I think a lot of pharmacy owners, well, do I need to take out a loan? Do I need to take out a line of credit? What are my options? And really, you have a third option kind of outside of that I thought was unique enough to ask on my audience, which is why I posted the poll. And you guys want to learn some more information about this. And so this is kind of short-term bridge types of things. Use it when you need it. Don't use it when you don't need it, which is a little different than getting a loan and getting a lump sum of money and, having that payment schedule and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of different financial tools to help you with your working capital. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys help pharmacies with getting them out of that pinch?
Exactly. So the first option, and the one I would recommend, and you can say Carlos, you're talking against yourself, but the first option would be to go get a line of credit from a bank. That is what I would recommend. The challenge with that option is that banks are what I would call rear view mirror lenders. And they would typically ask you for your last 2 years financials, et cetera, et cetera. So they're looking at your past, which usually has nothing to do with what you're going to be doing next year and your needs for working capital going forward. So typically, you make a submission to the bank, and the bank says, your financial look great, but we cannot give you $300,000. We would like to see a better top line, et cetera, et cetera. Come back next year, and we'll reevaluate. And as you're walking to the door, you're thinking to yourself, well, yeah, I'm going to come back next year, but if I don't have fresh working capital, nothing much is going to change. So again, a line of credit would be the first option, but if they don't give you enough money, then what we do is another good option. And that is basically what we do is we discount your receivables. So we take all your receivables that you have, and we advance you that money so that you can use that money. As we said a few minutes ago, you cannot use receivables to make payroll or pay wholesalers or make taxes. So we give you the tax on, the cash on an as needed basis. So you don't have to get all your receivables funded if you don't need it. You do it on an as needed basis. There is no long-term contract or anything like that. So you can literally do it as you need it. There is no problem with doing both. In other words, getting the line of credit, using our funds to supplement that. And as you deepen your relationship with your bank, and the bank starts feeling more comfortable with you and starts giving you more money, then you just use us less until you finally don't need us. So from that point of view, you can say that we're a little bit of a stepping stone.
Yep. I that's why I thought that this was worthwhile to share with the audience. It can help you in a small time pinch, and those growth opportunities. There was a lot of opportunities this year between COVID testing, different vaccine sites, and a lot of times people needed the capital to be able to take advantage of that opportunity. And what I hate hearing is, I just didn't have the money to go do that really awesome thing that would have been great for the community and ultimately great for my business as well. So I want to stop that. So Carlos, if somebody's thinking that this might be good for them, how do they get a hold of you for more information?
The best way, I think, is just reaching out to me. I mean, I can give you emails and websites and so on, but the best way to reach me, just give me a call. And my cell number, I mean, I urge your audience to just simply send me a text. It's 239-822-9906.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for talking with us today. I love talking about finances. I'm sure we'll be talking again more as we get into cash flow stuff. So thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and I really appreciate it, Carlos.
Thank you for having me, Lisa.